again, APWU family. This is APWU President Mark Demystifying with our podcast, communicating with you, the member. And it's good to be with you again. I hope everybody had very good holidays and a happy new year to one and all. And as we talked about in our last podcast, this is going to be a very busy year for the American Postal Workers Union, postal workers, and the labor movement as a whole. And one of the most important things coming up this year, vital to all our members, is negotiations for a new main collective bargaining agreement, a new union contract. I call it the main agreement because we do have some smaller union contracts, but the large agreement covers 200,000 postal workers, and it's actually the largest group of workers this year that will have a contract expiration, and we're going to be engaging in intense and important negotiations. The union contract, our collective bargaining agreement, addresses so many important things for us: our wages, our hours of work, our rights, conditions of employment, and of course, our benefits. So obviously, this is all vitally important. And our contract expires on September 20th, 2024. We're so fortunate that we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us, and we're able to work under a strong union contract. We also know there's always more work to do. But we like to remind ourselves, and should remind ourselves, about the many gains that are in our union contract. For example, our COLA, our cost of living adjustment. Think about how important that has been to us, especially in a time of rising inflation. We all took note of the wonderful contract struggle waged by the auto workers a few months back. But part of the reason they ended up on strike is they had lost their COLA in 2007-2008 timeframe. And we did a quick study of what would have happened to career postal workers in our pay scales if we had lost our COLA. A career employee in the post office would have $14,000 less a year had we also lost our COLA. So obviously, COLA is going to be extremely important to protect. Then we have our no layoff and job security protections for career employees who are in the service of more than 6 years. And of course, the 50-mile limit on excessing. So if management has to move employees, now they can't be moved more than 50 miles, which helps protect family life. People don't have to pick up and move. Children don't have to change schools. And then there's so many other wonderful things about a contract. The question of seniority and bidding, which brings fairness and non-discrimination to how we get our jobs and our days off and our hours of work. A grievance procedure to be able to protest things that management is doing wrong in the workplace, not abiding by the collective bargaining agreement, etc. Just cause protection against unjust firing and discipline. So all of these things have been won over many, many decades and generations of struggle. And when we go into collective bargaining, everything's up for grabs, and we have to make sure we're in the strongest position to protect those gains of the past. And if I can add one other gain in our last contract, the importance of having a 2-year backstop for most of our non-career PSE employees to make career. Still doesn't apply to the 4-hour post-plan offices with PSEs in those offices. But every other non-career employee, if they haven't made career by other means within the contract, after 2 years, they will automatically be converted to career. That was a great gain, and we're going to make sure that's protected going forward. So we're going to be working together with all of you, building maximum power and leverage and unity as we head into this new contract battle. And today I have with me Charlie Cash. Brother Cash is our Industrial Relations Director. Our Industrial Relations Director is the chief spokesperson in our negotiating process, so he has a critical role to play. He's an ET in the maintenance craft, comes out of Salt Lake City, where he was local president for many years. He came up to APWU headquarters in Washington, D.C. to assist the former Industrial Relations Director, Van Zimmerman, and since early 2022, Charlie Cash has now served as our Industrial Relations Director. So, Charlie, welcome.
Thank you, President Dimondstein. It's great to be here today. It's great to be able to reach out and speak to our members through this podcast. I think this is a great avenue to be able to talk and have people hear what's going on at headquarters. So I really appreciate the invite being here today. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us. I touched a little bit on your main role during our negotiations as the chief spokesperson, but what does that entail both sort of behind the scenes and publicly with the United States Postal Service and, of course, with all of you, our hardworking members?
It's as chief spokesperson, that title seems like all I would do would be in the meetings and talking to the post office and things like that. But it goes way beyond that. As the chief spokesperson, the Industrial Relations Department, and all the members of my staff are basically leading up the negotiations, especially as far as negotiation preparation, what could be our priorities, coordinating everything with all the different divisions within the union as we move forward in negotiations, making sure that we've addressed what the membership has asked us to negotiate through our labor management resolution process, things like that. Those are just some of the things that we do. Ultimately, the Industrial Relations Department is probably the busiest department during negotiations with all of our preparation and things that we do to coordinate and get all the cats herded together to make sure negotiations move forward.
Oh, great. So preparation is well underway, it sounds like.
Preparation actually for our department doesn't ever stop. We begin preparing for our next round of negotiations as soon as our last round of negotiations is over. We are always observing and looking what's going on in the labor world. We watch the other unions, how they negotiate. We watch what is going on in the economy. We watch how things are moving in the Postal Service. We track the Postal Service finances. We track the things that are going on in Congress and all of that stuff as far as preparations go. And then as we get closer into negotiations, we really start ramping up our preparation by doing things like reviewing our labor management resolutions, seeing what the members want us to make priorities. We review our old contracts. We review our grievances, what's going on out in the field, what the issues have been out in the field. So preparation is always an ongoing effort for the Industrial Relations Department.
I'm very honored and proud to be our lead negotiator, and you as the Industrial Relations Director are our chief spokesperson. But you could also share with the good listeners out there who makes up our National Negotiating Committee and how they fit into the whole process as we move forward in the fight for a good and solid new contract.
Sure. The National Negotiating Committee is established in our Constitution, and that of course includes yourself as president, Vice President Debbie Zaretti, Sister Liz Powell is on that committee. The Industrial Relations Director is on that committee I'm the chief spokesperson. Mark, you're our lead negotiator, and then each division director is also on that committee. So that would include Brother Michael Foster, Brother Edel Balagan, Brother Lamont Brooks, and Brother Aaron Brown. That is our National Negotiating Committee by the Constitution. And then, of course, we have other people who are involved in negotiations. Your assistant craft directors are involved. Your assistant division directors, staff people are involved. The attorneys are involved. But mainly it's your elected officers who are your negotiating committee.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. I know at this stage of negotiations, we're not in a position yet to talk about specific proposals. The committee, our National Negotiating Committee, will be developing those. The division directors from the clerk, maintenance, motor vehicle, and support services craft will be working with their assistant directors in the craft tables and developing many of those. But Charlie, could you talk about some of the broad stroke goals of the union in these negotiations upcoming?
Yeah. In every negotiation, we always want to start with a good foundation. And I already spoke a little bit about that, of the foundation that this union has had in collective bargaining agreements since our first agreement back in 1971 when we started moving forward. So some of our broad stroke goals are obviously to protect some of the most important things that we already have. One of the first things that comes to people's mind is always at the forefront of their mind is our COLA, our cost of living allowance. We want to make sure we protect that as being the only union that still receives 100% of the COLA for all of our career employees. We want to protect our job security that we have, our accessing requirements the 50, no accessing outside of 50 miles, especially right now in today's environment with the network modernization. That is extremely important. And against that backdrop of network modernization, we want to make sure that we protect our no layoff clause. But again, so that's just an example of the things that we want to continue to protect and grow on. But other things that we want to make sure that we're protecting and growing on and making better is the wage package. Oftentimes, I know that when I was out in the field working, that was one of the first thing I always looked at. What are our raises going to be? So we want to make sure that we get a fair wage increase for our employees. We want to address some of the other financial issues. And when I say financial issues, this comes down to things like the number of career employees we have versus the number of non-career employees. We also want to make sure that we are moving forward, as we have with the last couple of contracts, of addressing the two-tiered wage system that we have. We've been taking small bites of the elephant that we're eating with the two-tier wage system. In the last two agreements that we had in 2018, we were able to gain some steps back in the 2018 through 2021 contract. And the 2021 through 2024 contract, we were able to take even a few more bites out of that with what we were able to do along grade 8 and things like that. And we hope to continue to do that, making movement on the two-tier wage system. Right now, the labor movement is primed to address that two-tiered wage system. So that's something we want to work on and move forward in. But those are just some broad stroke, like you say, Mark, things that we're looking at. You know, Mark, you had talked a little bit earlier about the importance of our union contracts over the year. And I just look back at my experience when you first said that. When I started with the post office in 1997 as a non-career employee, my starting wage was $9.74 an hour. But I could count on a pay raise for just about every year my entire career. Eventually led to me being converted to career. And then, of course, our union contracts have been great for me, having been able to move from a non-career clerk into the maintenance craft, where I now make over $35 an hour as an electronics technician. No other type of jobs can you do that unless you have a good union contract. And the APWU has always had a great contract that has helped my family grow over the years.
Charlie, it's very interesting that in sharing your own story of once being a non-career postal employee, it reminds us of some of the great gains of our contract, particularly around this issue. In our last negotiations, we were able to get a 2-year backstop where our PSEs, hardworking non-career employees, were outside of our 4-hour post-plan offices. We're going to make full-time career status within 2 years if they haven't made it by other means and other provisions of the contract. And those are the kind of things we accomplish when we pull together with all of you out there. Our strength starts with every member. It starts with all of you who are members of this wonderful union. And so, moving the conversation forward, Charlie, can you share with us what negotiations actually look like? How do we get to opening day? What follows opening day? What happens when the contract expires on September 20th, and yet we may not have yet reached an agreement? And if that happens, what happens to our existing wages, our benefits, our rights, and our protections? And when I'm talking about protections, again, some of the things we've won over generations of struggles, like protection against unjust discipline, including termination, our rights to seniority and bidding. All those things continue. And so give us a little flavor of what that 3-month period looks like, starting an opening day on June 25th, and then going through the expiration of the contract and maybe beyond on September 20th, 2024.
Sure. So when we get to opening day is it's exactly what it sounds like. I mean, you all heard about opening day for baseball, opening day for football, whatever. It's usually, some big event. Everybody, there's the big games, the big kickoff.
So does that mean we're going to have 60,000 people on the stand?
Oh, we are hoping so. Maybe virtually. We would really love that. But what we end up doing is we have an initial kickoff meeting with the Postal Service, where the negotiating committees for both sides, the Postal Service will have a negotiating committee that they will determine on their own. But on that opening day, it's going to be the head of the union and the head of the Postal Service sitting across from each other, exchanging their ideas and their thoughts on what negotiations should be and should accomplish. The Postmaster General will be there. you as our lead negotiator, and he will exchange ideas. There could be some initial proposal exchanges where we talk about what proposals we want to start addressing, and then from there, after this day, which I will say that on June 25th for that opening day, we actually will be broadcasting that over the web, so everybody can watch it. You can watch it on your own, hopefully have a watch party, but it will be there for everybody to be able to see and be able to watch. It's not a closed opening session. We want people to watch it. We want them to see our interactions with the Postal Service's negotiating committee to begin with. So once we, after opening day, we will then settle into the more finer aspects of negotiations. The crafts, the clerk craft, the motor vehicle craft, maintenance craft, support services, they will break off into their own committees to have their own craft specific negotiations. The other general articles, we will also be breaking up into groups that will negotiate their specific article issues. And then, of course, the lead negotiators, which is Mark, you, and a designee from the Postal Service, will talk about some of our much larger issues and negotiate things like the wage package and things like that. But it's a constant share of proposals. Postal Service shares their ideas. Maybe they offer a counter proposal, and both sides have a right to do their own proposals. And what we do, Mark, as the APWU, we do what we call conceptual proposals, where we look at, as in part of our preparations, we say, okay, what in the contract, what do the members want? What's the concept that they want? We then present to the Postal Service what that concept may be. And then we work back and forth through negotiations. And just for an example of a conceptual proposal that I can give you is we would put on paper something like the Office of Personnel Management and the remainder of the federal government have extended parental leave to their employees. We, the American Postal Workers Union, propose that the Postal Service negotiate with the APWU additional paid parental leave provisions. That's an idea of a conceptual proposal. We didn't get into the actual language of it. We didn't get into how much or anything like that. It's a concept so that we can continue to be open and continue to talk. Now, let me just be clear. That was an example, something I thought totally off the top of my head. It's nothing we have written down, but I also know that paid parental leave is something that is on our members' mind because I do get questions about it. So that's some of the things about negotiations. Now, you would ask me about what happens if we don't reach a negotiated agreement by the time our contract expires September 20th, 2024. Historically, our contract has continued on. The provisions of the contract have still remain in effect. They still apply, like you had brought up, just cause. Just cause provisions are still in place. The wage provisions are still in place. People progressing in step and level is still in place. Generally, the MOUs in the back of the contract, for example, the MOU on things like the 2-year conversion, those things will continue on. The residual MOU and the filling of jobs will continue on. That's historically is what has happened. That's one of the reasons why our contract continues on. And then that brings us to the point of interest arbitration, where if we can't reach an agreement, we then have binding interest arbitration. So our contract continues until the interest arbitrator puts a contract in place.
And I think it's worth noting in that 2 of the last 3 rounds of bargaining, we did have to go to interest arbitration because we could not reach a principled voluntary agreement. The good news there is that we got new contracts and we did pretty well in the interest arbitration process. But there's a real danger with interest arbitration because our future is then in the hands of one arbitrator. So yes, the union will be fully prepared, but aren't we much better off if we remain in control of our own destiny, can reach a principled agreement that would, through the work of the Rank and File Bargaining Advisory Committee, be able to then go out to a vote to all of you, because you should be the ultimate deciders, not one person. So, Charlie, I just talked about the Rank and File Bargaining Advisory Committee and the process of getting to a vote on a tentative agreement. Share with the good listeners a little more about that process, please.
Thanks, Mark. That process actually begins before our first day of negotiations, and that starts with the appointment of the Rank and File Bargaining Advisory Committee. That committee is appointed by the Executive Board. Each member of the Executive Board can appoint one person of their choosing to this Rank and File Bargaining Advisory Committee, and the president actually gets two, because you'll get to choose one person to represent the deaf and hard of hearing community that is within the APWU. So we will have 14 members of this committee, and they will be brought in. And when we reach a full tentative agreement, meaning that we have met, we've negotiated, and we've agreed that all of these different parts or tenets that was negotiated and discussed during our negotiating window have become one tentative agreement, will be brought in. They will be presented the tentative agreement by our National Bargaining Committee, and then they will be given the opportunity to review it, to ask the negotiators questions, to ask the negotiators to give them clarification on things, and then they will have the opportunity to vote as the Rank and File Bargaining Advisory Committee to send the contract out for a vote. If they votes to send it out for an agreement, it will be then prepared. We will prepare ballots. It'll be a simple ballot with a yes, I'm in favor of ratification, or no, I'm not in favor of ratification. And historically, we've sent out a copy of the tentative agreement with possible language changes. It's not the final product, but we send that out for all the members to review and look at and have their say. But only if that's the Rank and File Bargaining Advisory Committee votes to send it out to the members. The Rank and File Bargaining Advisory Committee could also vote not to send it out for a ratification and send it back to us for further negotiations.
And when you say it's the final contract that we send out, it is all the language we negotiated, but it doesn't become final until the members decide that it's final. I just want to clear that up, because we don't send something out and then change the language after a vote.
No, and look, having been involved in this process multiple times myself, I was once on the Rank and File Bargaining Advisory Committee. I have also served on the last two contract proofreading teams. So when I say final, I will also say that sometimes we get into these contracts and we send out in the tentative agreement where we misspelled a few words or we forgot a period or something like that. So even after it's ratified, we always go back and make sure that it is properly written and properly printed.
But what people are voting on does not change.
What people are voting on does not change. That is correct.
So, and one of the reasons I think we did so well in the last round of bargaining is National Negotiating Committee. I think really worked well as a team. We rode together. So if you could talk about that, because for example, we bring back from our separate committees that we may meet with management on. Let's say there's a group, management and union, that's meeting on safety issues. We will bring a lot of those discussions back to the entire committee so they can weigh in, they can see where we're at. If we're in our deep discussions around wage increases and COLA and things like that, those will always be brought back to the committee. So you could share a little bit of how important it is to keep everybody together. How we do that?
Yeah, we have to meet on a regular basis as a negotiating committee, because there are a lot of moving parts to the contract. There are a lot of, different aspects. Like you brought up the safety, Article 14. There could be a group negotiating and discussing Article 14. There could be a group negotiating and discussing changes to the grievance process in Article 15. So we bring these groups back together. We get together as a committee. We do the presentations, basically say where we're at, and everybody gives input, because each division could have a different way that it may affect them that other people may not be thinking about. So we meet regularly. We talk about these things regularly, and it's important that those open lines of communications, that the clerk craft knows what the maintenance craft is working on. The maintenance craft knows what the clerk craft is working on. People know what I might be working on in, for example, Article 8 overtime, if I'm working on any overtime issues, that we're all talking about these things. And so it's important for us to keep open lines of communications, and sometimes some good disagreement helps us improve our negotiations. Granted, I was a staffer for the last negotiations, but I got to see this in action. I got to see the bargaining committee meet and got to see them talk. And it was from some of those meetings that some improvements and some good thoughts and exchanges came out that ultimately helped us reach the agreement that we reached for 21 through 24.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. And the other thing for all of you good listeners out there is in negotiations, we're never going to get everything we want. We're never going to get everything we need. But the key is to make real progress. So within that, the negotiating committee also has to be able to deal with the priorities. What's most important? What's next important? And we have to weigh all of those things as we try to put all the pieces of the puzzle together for a solid new union contract.
Yeah. And, Mark, it's always interesting. I think sometimes even I seem to forget it, negotiations is not a one-way street. It's
That's
not
right.
where we put something out and that's the only thing we're going to talk about. The post office has a right under the contract and under the law to bring things to the table and for us to talk about them and too. So sometimes we have to talk about what the post office is offering and if it benefits us, hurts us or not. And so
That's right.
again, it's a bilateral discussion.
Right. And negotiations, APW family, really comes down to building our power and leverage. The 8 people at the bargaining table, that's only 8 of us. Our power and leverage comes from 160,000 plus members for the foundation of this union. But what are some of the things, Charlie, as we look to this coming year? We're early in the year, but things are going to move quickly. What are some of the things we're going to be working on as a union with all of you good members out there to build our power and leverage and make sure management gets the message that postal workers, dedicated, hardworking postal workers, deserve a dynamite new contract?
Mark, I appreciate that question. And it's something that building power and leverage and being united, it's not just the bargaining committee. Like you say, it's all of us. It's something that we all have to do. And we're going to need the participation of the members at all levels, from the workroom floor to their local union meetings, to their state conventions, to our national convention. We need the members to stand up and do some things. And it can be as simple as wearing your T-shirt on APW T-shirt days that we still have now, to show the Postal Service that we have members out there and we have members that care. It might be something as simple as wearing a sticker as we go through our contract campaign. That's always something that we've always tried to do as the APWU is to have a contract campaign to unite our members, to unite the public on our side, and to get everybody to understand the importance of a good labor contract, whether that is our contract or anybody else's contract. It is important for labor to stand united, and especially important for our people to stand united. We're going to be doing some things like a slogan contest. Each time we've had a slogan for our contracts, we'll be announcing the slogan competition and how people can enter in their slogans. We are going to have on opening day, that will be streamed so people can watch it. We encourage people to get together and have watch parties, whether it's local or heck, if you're at work, you may not be able to watch it while you're running a DBCS, but or working on your letter case, but put your headphones in and listen to it. So I encourage every single one of you out there to text contract, that's CONTRACT, to 91990. Again, text contract to 91990 to get added to our update list for our upcoming negotiations discussions, our contract campaign, and to find out what's going on. We've also got some other things in development that we're going to do that we're excited about. We haven't finalized them yet, but that's another reason to make sure you send that contract to 91990 so that you can get in on the loop on that. So those are just some of the things that we're doing. We need people to stand up and look when negotiations get tight and things get going on out there, it might be time to even take it to the public. So heck, we may even ask you to go out there and do an informational picket.
That's
or
right.
talk to the press, write a letter to your editor, whatever. There's all those kinds of things that bring us, that bring us together and make us stand up together and show management that we're not taking these for granted and that any member is going to take them laying down.
That's a really good point, Charlie, because once we develop our proposals, undoubtedly we will have proposals at the bargaining table with management about improving service to the public. That may come out with proposals on better staff in order to improve service to the public and in order to have safer and less stressful, less hostile working conditions. So explaining to the public that we're on their side, very much like the teacher unions when they are in their contract battles. Our union and our members are on the side of the people for better service, for improved service, for expanded services. We will have those kind of proposals at the bargaining table. And so informing the public, uniting with the public, you're right. About a watch party, I know we're used to watch parties on Super Bowl Sunday. A lot of fun, at least for those whose teams made it. But think about how much more important that real Super Bowl is for us when we're dealing with our wages, our hours of work, conditions of employment, and our benefits. So we'll hope all of you will join in. So Charlie, any closing thoughts for the members out there? Before I close it out.
One other thing I just wanted to throw out there is to all the members, get involved. This is your contract. And this is what you can start getting involved and do it at the local level. If you have an idea for negotiations, if you want something negotiated or you want to give something to your national negotiating team to give them something to your idea, we have the labor management resolution process. And I encourage people, go talk to your local leaders about how this process works, where you can go to a meeting and you can give a proposal and it can be voted on. And then that proposal is sent to the state convention and a state convention can vote on that resolution. And then that resolution can be sent to the national convention, thank you, that we're having in Detroit in July of this year. And those resolutions can be voted on. That doesn't mean just because it was voted on, it's automatically going to become a proposal in negotiations, but it does give us an idea of what you members want and what you view as your priorities. And that is important to this process. This is your contract. This is the member's contract. So get out there, participate whatever way that you can. And I hope we do reach a tentative agreement, that it gets sent out for ratification, that we get 200,000 ballots back. Everybody had a say in it, whether it be yes or no, because I want to see people vote and participate on this contract. Mark, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to negotiations. It's going to be a challenge. It's one of the things that when I started in the post office in 1997, I can't even imagine that I'm at the position that I am now to lead this contract, but I am excited for it, looking forward to it, and looking forward to working with you and all the negotiating committee on getting a great contract for our people.
Well, thanks, Charlie. That's a great closing message. It's your union, APWU family. How far we drive it, how hard we drive it, how fast we drive it is up to all of us. So be involved, and the contract's a great time to be involved. One other thing I want to add before we close out is our organizing director, Sister Anna Smith, and I are developing a organizing campaign. When I say organizing campaign, I'm talking about within the Postal Service, within our own ranks. We still have tens of thousands of people that you work with every day. Well, you don't work with all 10,000. You work with some of them every day. And they're riding your back, and they're riding all the members' back, enjoying the COLA, benefiting from the COLA, benefiting from the no layoff protections as career employees, benefiting from the fairness of seniority and bidding, the right to protest through a grievance procedure, our just cause protections, and everything else has been won through generations of struggle, and yet refuse to pay a small amount of union dues to keep the struggle progressing. So during these few months leading up to the contract battle, you can all help build our power and leverage by signing up those non-members, bringing them into our ranks, and that growth and that strength will certainly be felt at the bargaining table. Management knows exactly how many people are in the union. And so if they get a strong message that people are joining in droves as part of the fight for a good, new, strong contract. So with that, again, we look forward to a year of progress It's always going to be a struggle. Mo Biller, our president for 21 years, many of you knew him, maybe a lot of you did, but he always had a saying that the struggle continues, and it always does. And this coming year, one of the main way that this struggle continues is the negotiations battle for a new, good union contract that respects and honors everything you do day in and day out for the people of this country. Thanks all. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Carry on, and solidarity forever. You can download the podcast on all streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts regularly.